So yes, the Craft Academy is what you're watching here, and great to have your company. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Dave Bradford, and the lovely Rosella is our guest for this hour, and we're talking about, of course, Pergamano, a lovely ancient craft really that's still got legs in this day and age and has still got a huge following. And this lady teaches possibly you. I don't know if you're a student of Rosella's or not, but you certainly could be in the future.
Yes.
And I could be in the future too.
Yes.
But this whole hour is showing you tips and techniques. And you've talked about grid work earlier on. You said there's an element of you've got to concentrate on grid
Right,
work.
well,
Yeah?
not on these. These are the multi-grids, so this is the one. If you're a bit stressed, pop your parchment on here, 10 minutes, you can't go wrong. And the reason you can't go wrong is that all you're doing is following the lines. So you choose which bit you'd like to emboss on these. So these multi-grids, they're design grids almost. They come lots of different designs. They've normally got borders on them, motifs on them, and they all work the same. So we pop our parchment on the top. We then emboss, again with the largest tool that we can. And when we are ready and we've done all our embossing, we'll leave the parchment where it is, but we turn the entire grid over. Can I just pass those to you
sure.
and have a look at those? And then with our one needle tool, any perforations to be made, we actually then make through the grid. And again, we do that just shallowly, because we will then reperforate later, ready for snipping.
So there are lots, presumably, of these grids out there that you can
are.
buy in different patterns and different styles.
Yeah, I think we're up to 43 at the moment.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, so lots and lots. I've given you just a few examples of cards there. So you can take either the main motif from the middle, or we can just do little straps from it.
So the idea is not to do the whole sheet, but just to pick out elements
Just
from
exactly,
it.
choose exactly what you'd like to from there.
Have a little look at these. These are beautiful, aren't they? Just one of those circles makes a fantastic embellishment on this card just here.
So when people say it takes a long time, it can take 10 minutes, and you can put some parchment on your card depending on the effect that you want at the end.
I think any parchment on any card takes it to that level of luxury, and it just increases its, I don't know, gives it more credibility and more ancient beauty, doesn't
And I
it?
think it's a bit of you in it, isn't it?
Yes, that's true. Oh, I like that. That postcard.
Yes, you can stamp on parchment. It's really, really versatile material. So I'm just getting a bit more paper on it.
Beautiful. And there's just a little square in the centre.
Yeah, so you only need a little bit, but with a lot of matting and layering, it can look great.
Makes it even more special. You've done something and added to it that makes it even more personal. So lovely.
The grids I talked about that we needed to count.
This
So we've got a choice. We've got 4. We've got diagonal grids.
Is it like battleships?
It's just a little bit like, isn't it? And these come in bold and fine, and these are really fine. So for a beginner, I'd recommend going for the bold straight away, unless you've got really good eyesight.
So that means the holes are a bit bigger?
They are, yes. And we do use a different tool. So on the multi-grids, we used a 1 needle fine tool. On the bolder grids, we use a 1 needle bold tool. And these are lovely grids. I'm just going to show you what I've done here, which is just a little border on this diagonal grid. So this time, rather than embossing first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to perforate first. And this is the diagonal, and it makes these lovely little daisy shapes. So it's really nice to do.
So it is a case, is it almost like, is it like cross stitch?
It is just like cross stitch, yes. Certainly on the straight one. This one's not, in that it's not symmetrical because it's diagonal. And then once I've perforated, what I would then do is actually take it off, relocate it, choose a small tool. I've got a 1mm tool there. And you can actually see when it's located properly, you can see through the holes. And then all you need to do, if you want to emboss around it, is just do a little bit of a wiggle.
The sense of achievement, though, after you've done a project and you've come to the end of it, it must be amazing.
It certainly is. Let me show you that, because I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on the straight grid.
Isn't that just incredible? It's small, but boy, it's so effective using that grid, and then embossing using the grid as well. So would you say that's one of the most essential must-have tools for it?
If you want to do grid work, absolutely. You don't have to do grid work. You can do free work and just white work.
But is this using the grid?
Yeah, and that's actually using the diagonal grid.
So this is using the diagonal grid, this one here. And wait until you see this. This is a work of art. Oh my word. Look at this. Isn't that amazing?
And it's absolutely beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's using different tools but on the grid.
That's right.
Right. Wow. Presumably that's a little bit down the line if you're a beginner.
To be honest, it's a bit of patience, that's all. If you just take your time, because the technique's the same,
Right.
Always.
But how would you know how to get that? Is that something taken from a book?
That's actually from a CD-ROM.
Oh, is it?
So yeah, I often bring CD-ROMs and use them not only for the backing papers, but then for patterns as well.
Okay. And I've got to show you this.
Actually, these are both, those two that you pointed out, both from a design team member, Karen, and they're absolutely beautiful, aren't they? I was absolutely blown away when I saw them.
The Royal Carriage or Cinderella's Carriage. Amazing.
And can you see the little spots on the horse? So that's just on the grid again, just as we've just done with the embossing.
Wow.
Really effective, isn't it?
There are so many different techniques involved in one craft, which I never realised.
Yes.
And a lovely, that could be a wedding invitation, it could be a sympathy card, something like that, but the most ornate cross, again done with the grid. Presumably the grid helps to make everything uniform.
Yes, exactly. So when you snip, it's uniform because they're evenly spaced, and when you're embossing on it, it is as well, so that it just gives a perfect image.
Great.
Now, I told you there was bold and fine.
Yep.
So that's a pattern that's done on the bold straight grid, and that's the exact same pattern on a fine straight grid. So you can see the difference then in the size of the pattern.
Right.
I don't know exactly how many times less it is. I've not got around to doing that, but it's considerably finer, as you can see.
Absolutely.
So both of them are great fun to do. Just one is more delicate than the other.
And also, you know, that wouldn't take you very long to achieve that, would it?
No, and I'm going to show you how we do that.
Okay.
So the first thing you do is, anyway, like a grid work pattern. So I've made this pattern, I'll pop it that way. It's just a sheet of squared paper that you can download. I've given myself a key, it's 2 key, that's it. So I can perforate on the green holes and I'm going to emboss on the red holes, and that's it.
Okay.
So this is the non-talking bit. So if you want to tell a joke or something at this point, it's a great time to do it.
This is where the tongue comes out.
It is, yes. Stop slurping. So I'm going to go for my one needle bowl tool. Now,
what's your favourite technique, would you say? Is this the one that you have to kind of think about? Is that the one you love the most?
Oh, I don't know. It depends which way the wind's blowing, to be honest. It could be. And I do love my grid work. I do love my white work. So
Right.
I don't know.
Hard to choose.
It is really. I love it all. Following my grid. So for my perforating, my one needle bowl tool, and I'm only going to semi-perforate. It's on the perforating mat, so I'm not going to go through to the table or my knees or anywhere else. And then you're just counting it, so it's sort of 2 along. So you'd go 1, 2.
Does it matter where you start?
Well, if it's going to be a square, you'd want it somewhere in the middle. So like you would with a cross stitch, you know, just sort of think about it first. And then I'd work my way through. When I came to this bit, I'm missing a hole, and then I'm doing 4 along, so we'd go 1, 2, 3, 4.
If you wanted to, and my director's just pointed this out, if you put the graph underneath the parchment, could you trace, perforate it to the chart?
No, because it's not the same size.
Ah, okay.
If you weren't using a grid at all, you could perforate through a pattern, by all means.
Right.
And that's a recognised technique, is to perforate through a pattern. But we do have a nice way of doing this, and I do this all the time because, to be honest, I say that you can't talk for this and I can't stop talking. So I make mistakes. So what I do is I make a template.
Can you camouflage a mistake, though?
You can, if you've perforated, you can tend to push it over a little bit. If not, we call it an opportunity. We put a butterfly over that, or a flower, or a die cut, or something. So don't waste a pattern because it's gone wrong.
No.
We can always do something about it. So once you've actually done this, I've made a template here. Let's find something dark to go behind it. So I've actually perforated my grid work pattern, and I went wrong. And that was the last one I did. And can you see where I've put a big red mark?
Yeah.
Yep, that's it, yeah. I did that wrong. But
Right.
it doesn't matter because this is my template. So now I'm going to lay that over my parchment and perforate through it, and I'm not going to go on that red hole again.
Right, okay.
Because I've done that. I don't need to do that again.
That's a good idea, though.
So-
if you did go wrong, just use that as a template for the
Yeah,
next one.
that's it. And then you've then got a template. You can use that over and over again. So you can do exactly the same grid work pattern over and over again. So again, you can line it up. And also, once you go through, if you jiggle your needle a little bit,
It's amazing how precise those mats are, how many holes, tiny holes there are in them.
aren't they?
Thousands.
But can you see how quick this is now? So now it becomes a talker, so I'm happy again now, so I don't mind. And
This is the type of crafting I love because, you know, you get amazing results, but everyone can do it and everyone can achieve the same result if you've got the right tools.
Absolutely, yeah, and a limited amount of tools. So I consider it quite an inexpensive craft because it is just so versatile. So all I need to do then is work my way through that, but I've got one that I've done. So there we go. And
Here it is.
there's one more item of snipping I'd like to show on that.
There we
So
go.
that's, and can you see those little crosses? I just want to show how we cut those crosses, because that's a real fundamental of lace work,
Right.
is these little tiny crosses.
So this is your snipping as well, snipping technique
This is,
again?
yeah,
Right.
it is, but it's involved in your grid work, because normally your grid work would involve then 4 hole perforations to cut a cross. As we did before, parchment's nice and flat, snips are nice and flat. We hold our snips always over our waste material.
Right.
Now, in this case, my waste material is the middle of that cross. So I'm going to put my snips in there, I'm going to lower them, I'm going to twist them, and I'm going to snip. Then I'm going to turn the entire project round to do the next one. So in, down, twist, snip, turn my project round again. So really do not be tempted to do this.
Right.
Turn it round.
Yep.
And on my table, there we go. Also, I've got a little bit of a perforating mat there, because sometimes your fingers just aren't long enough, especially if you're going to then perhaps do crosses within the centre of your design. So a little bit of a perforating mat there. So,
And that's the way to do the cross?
and that's how to do the cross.
Oh, wow.
And if you do struggle with your crosses, it's probably because you're either not turning your work, or perhaps you don't have your snips over your waste material. But that's the little crosses.
Fascinating. Absolutely amazing. All these different techniques.
Okay.
Which I never realised. So there we go, that's the grid work. So that's how that basically works. We've got one more aspect of Pergamano to talk about, of course, as well, and we'll be moving on in a second to colouring, but it's all part, remember, of our Craft Academy Hour.